All right, Skylar, would you please now mute all participants and you all will hear a notification that our meeting is now recording. Thank you, Skylar. And without further ado, all right, hello, fellow Rotarians. My name is Reed Miller and I am your president of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our weekly membership meeting. I now ask that you all join me in reciting the four-way test. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, thank you, Skylar. And at this time, I ask any Rotarians who have invited a guest to please raise your hand so that you can introduce your guest to the club. If you are a visiting Rotarian who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself.
Great.
But let us know you're here in the chat box. All right, do we have any guests? Seeing none, hearing none. Anybody going once, going twice? Last call for guests. Okay, let's keep this rolling. And of course, thank you to all of our members for joining us here for another Zoom meeting. I hope you all had the opportunity to properly recover from Thanksgiving. My family added a brisket to our turkey tradition, which required a little extra recovery time. I did enjoy the break and the extra time spent with my family, and I hope that you all did as well. At the very least, I hope we all took the holiday as an opportunity to reflect on all that we have to be grateful for. I know I took a moment of gratitude for our club and all of our wonderful members. I'm grateful for the friendships that have come from this club. I'm grateful for all the work that this club has done and continues to do in our community and around the world. We are truly lucky to be able to be in a position to serve those less fortunate. However, the break did come with some news, some unfortunate news, that of a brand new COVID variant. Yes, your club leadership and board are aware. Yes, we are still working towards an in-person meeting. No, nothing is final yet. We have meetings planned around how we can safely and comfortably get back to in-person meetings. So we are working diligently on that. Our goal is still the first of the year. We have a lot of details to work out, but as of right now, that is still the plan. More details to come on that. And updates will continue to come at our meetings, in spokes, and via additional emails if necessary. So keep your eyes peeled for any communication coming up on our upcoming meetings. All right, now that we have reached the very last day of November, I'd like to take one final opportunity to wish a happy birthday to our fellow Rotarians who were born in the month of November. Happy birthday to our November Rotarians. Thank you, Skylar. And now I'd like to hand it over to past President Mark Fovinci to speak with you about our annual trust drive. Welcome, past President Mark.
Thank you, Reed. Well, today I've been asked to answer the question of why I give to the trust drive. And I give to the trust drive for the same reason that I'm a Rotarian. It makes me feel good to help others and make our community a better place. So when I give to the Portland Rotary Charitable Trust, it funds our club's projects. So part of that is going to go to our Community Grants Committee, which ends up going to nonprofits or community. And last year, 3 examples of that would be DePaul Treatment Center, Community Warehouse, Habitat for Humanity, and there were several others. Another committee this funds is Wheels of Power, providing wheelchairs to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them. And all those committees that all of you are on get funded with these trust drive contributions: Domestic Violence Solutions, Enterprise Academy, and others. And on top of that, when I give to the Rotary Foundation, a lot of you know that as your Paul Harris contribution, that goes to international service projects for Rotary worldwide, such as ending polio, bringing clean water to places that don't have it around the world, promoting peace. Those are some of the major projects they do. So if you believe in the great things that Rotary does, you need to make that gift to the trust drive today. So I encourage you all to do that and make Portland and the world a better place. President Reed.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that message on our trust drive and why you donate. And I would certainly have to double down on that. I'm right there with you. It feels good to donate and to know that you're giving money to a good place. And then to be able to watch over the course of the year all the good things that our club does. It's just, it feels good and it's the right thing to do. And as a Rotarian, we pledge that we would do that. So thank you, Mark. And now I would like to welcome our Rotarian, Dan Bramsky, who will be presenting this week's reflection. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, President Reed. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. This weekend, I took my sons to see the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, a show of lights, music, and action. And on Sunday night, I watched my friend light the first candle of Hanukkah. Last night, I climbed up into our attic, fumbled around in the darkness for boxes of Christmas lights, and I took them down and sorted through them and took out the bad ones and untangled all the things, cursing myself. Why didn't I just do this last year when I put them away in January? And we hung them up outside on the trees and on our gutters in order just to create a cheery mood for the rest of our street and hopefully encourage others to do the same. The tree in downtown in Pioneer Plaza has been lit, and I'm sure many will sit around fires in their homes, gazing into the flickering flames, whether it's in a fireplace or now as happens these days on a TV screen. And I haven't been downtown in a while, but I hope that big martini glass up on the hill on the south side of downtown is lit up as well. The Danish have Huga, the 7 candles of Kwanzaa, the Yule log, and the winter solstice all celebrate light. Around the world, we all push against the darkness and the cold right now, dreaming of memories and people past, and also the bright future ahead, and the warm comfort of family, friends, and home. This season, how can we as Rotarians be that light in our families, our community, and the world? And I'll leave you with that question. Remember, even the smallest flame lights a room.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. Wonderful reflection. I think we're all there. I think we all know that question of why didn't we do this better last year, putting this away? Why am I dealing with this hassle again this year? That rings home. And my wife and my mother-in-law and my niece went to go see the Trans-Siberian Orchestra this weekend as well. And they all came back with rave reviews. So it sounds like that was probably a fun outing for you. And for any of our other Rotarians, if you are interested in giving a reflection in the future, please reach out to Susan Cooksey to set up a date to schedule your reflection. Her email is twonavycaptains@gmail.com. And Skylar, would you please drop that into the chat? All right. Always looking for volunteers for our reflections. And now at this time, I'd like to welcome Rotarian Mike Lester of the Homelessness Solutions Committee to the podium. Welcome, Mike.
All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you. This being the last Tuesday of November, Homeless Solutions Committee Month, I thought that it'd be a great idea to give you a real quick presentation on the kind of the state of houselessness in the Portland metro area. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So the things I'm going to talk to you today about is how houselessness is a national and not just a Portland problem. Data on the Portland metro houselessness situation. We're trying to change to houselessness from homelessness. I keep getting it wrong. And then a little bit about what Portland Metro has done to address houselessness. First, as you can see by this exhibit, houselessness is really a national problem. It's a little more pronounced on the West Coast, but it exists in every state in the nation, in some places more than others, but it's truly a national problem. Focusing on the West Coast a little bit, you can see that Portland has actually done at least as well, if not a little better than some of the other cities. Through 2019 point in time count, which is the last we have, Portland had a 4% decrease from 2017 in houselessness, while Seattle had a 3% decrease. And some of the California cities had increases, sometimes pretty large. That being said, Portland's rate of chronic hopelessness has increased twice the national rate, and Oregon is one of only 4 states where over half of the houseless population is living unsheltered, which I'll address a little more in a minute. So what about right now? Well, there are reasons to think that houselessness has increased over the last 18 months. Certainly COVID, job losses at the low end of the scale has pushed people to houselessness. Continued lack of affordable housing in general. You've probably seen a big increase in your house value. Well, that's not good for people trying to get in or to rent. Minimum wage continues to be too low to affordably live in Portland, and lack of wraparound services. We often think if we just give somebody a house, all their problems are solved. But if they've lived outside, they've dealt with trauma that needs to be addressed. Here is the point in time count for the Portland metro area over most of the last decade. You can see that in terms of total houselessness, the numbers have stabilized, if not decreased a little bit. Of concern is that the unsheltered population is getting larger. And when you can see that we have more shelters than we did earlier in the decade, they're still not nearly enough. Digging in a little deeper, there's a disproportionate impact of houselessness. People of color represent 29% of the population in the area, but are 38% of the houseless population. And then there are certain vulnerable groups like people with disabilities and particularly people over 70 where the houselessness has increased dramatically. That's a real problem. So what has Portland metro area done to address this problem? There's a perception that it's not really doing anything. You see it in the news, you hear people talking. Part of that is there's a lack of emergency shelters, and it's made houselessness more visible. The housing model that emphasized permanent housing to emergency shelters has caused that. Second, the problem is vast. There's over 15,000 houseless people in Oregon. And the problem developed over a lot of years and will take years to solve. But at the same time, what have we done? Well, we've done actually quite a bit. In 2016, there was the Portland Housing Bond that was passed for 1,300 affordable units. In 2018, Metro passed a measure for 7,400. In 2020, Portland declared a state of emergency, which allowed changes in the zoning laws to encourage affordable housing. And in 2020, we had Here Together Oregon. I think Cole Merkel talked to the group just a couple of weeks ago. Now, that was a huge measure that was estimated to provide up to $250 million a year for wraparound services. And then the city has appropriated funds, $5 million in 2020 for the Portland Street Response. And then they just passed another $38 million budget to expand homeless shelter capacity, which is clearly needed. So what are our takeaways here? That the Portland houselessness situation is much like other West Coast cities, maybe even a little better, that the homelessness situation has stabilized somewhat by 2019, although it certainly could be worse now. That houselessness impacts minorities and other vulnerable populations more than it does the general population. Portland Metro has done quite a bit to and committed substantial money to combat homelessness, despite a short-term solution is still unlikely.
It's the Rotary meeting, but I'll just...
We need to keep the fight going. Thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Reed.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the update. I have a couple of quick questions if we have time, and I guess we do have time because I get to decide. I noticed Oakland up 45%, and I know we're more concerned about Portland because that's our backyard, but do you have any idea why Oakland blew up 45% in 2 years?
I would have to look that up and get back to you about that. I'm not sure why that particular metric exists.
And then my other
affordability
question,
of living problems is even worse in California than it is here.
my other question on those last couple of slides, there's been millions and millions of dollars committed to our issue, and it's noted that, you know, we don't have any short-term solution in sight. What do we make of that? That we are making such a big effort, but we're not really seeing much of an impact.
Well, like I said, this problem took many years to develop and will take many years to solve. For example, affordable housing units don't get built right after the money gets apportioned. It takes years for those to be built. And I think the Portland housing bond is mostly complete now, but the Metro housing bond is only partially underway. And so it's going to take years.
Thank you, Mike. Drew, I think we have time for one more quick question. We got about another minute on our agenda here.
Well, I have something to offer in what gets misunderstood, and some of the areas in the country that really haven't gotten this do have things exploding as far as percentages, and that is making the distinction with monies from affordable housing to affording the housing once you get it. So there has to be the focus on job support, on treatment so that someone actually can function well to be in the job world. And so, so many partners, Salvation Army, VOA, and so forth, really get this and know that that's what needs to be put in front of those funneling dollars at every level, cities, county, state. That's it.
Thank you, Drew. And I'll just mention too, that we always talk about homelessness, but we never talk about the rampant drug use, the decriminalization of drugs, and the over-the-top mental health issues being caused by the drug use. So until the drug issue is resolved, the situation is going to continue to get worse, no matter how much money we put into providing housing. Because so many people have mental health issues and they're not shelter compliant, as we say. And it breaks my heart. It really does.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bob. And thank you, Drew. Appreciate the input there. And now it is time for our breakout room with a few of your fellow Rotarians. When you enter the breakout room, please introduce yourselves to the others in the group. As always, you are more than welcome to chat openly with your fellow Rotarians, but as a conversation starter, I'm recommending that we start with our Thanksgiving break. How did everything go? Now remember, the point of these breakout rooms is to give you all the opportunity to socialize with your fellow Rotarians, like we will soon be doing at our upcoming in-person meetings. My point is, get out there, have some fun with your fellow Rotarians. We'll see you back here in about 7 or 8 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Hope you all had a great conversation in your breakout room and enjoyed the opportunity to interact with your fellow Rotarians. At this time, I would like to please welcome Rotarian Cole Mills as your chair of the day. Welcome, Cole.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Good to see everybody's faces. In our little breakout room, it sounded like everybody in our room had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everybody else did as well. So today I have the opportunity to introduce Jay Ward. And I asked a friend and colleague of Jay's to see if we could have somebody from the Energy Trust of Oregon come and give a presentation to the club. I've known Energy Trust of Oregon through my friend Amber Cole for quite some time, but I candidly have never really fully understood exactly what they do and how they do it and how they mesh with the other entities out there that deal with the energy that we use in the city. So I felt, or excuse me, in the state. So I felt like Jay would be a great person to join us for a presentation on Energy Trust. So Jay Ward is the Energy Trust of Oregon's Senior Community Relations Manager. where he works to align energy trust programs with Oregon business and community needs. Prior to joining Energy Trust, Jay served as the Director of Business Outreach and Clackamas and Washington County Field Representative for U.S. Senator Ron Wyden. Jay earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Communications from Oregon State University. During his career, Jay worked as a manager, territorial sales representative, and in the nonprofit sector. He lives in Portland and eagerly anticipates the day when he can return to work with his colleagues and associates in Energy Trust downtown offices instead of engaging virtually with them from the spare bedroom. So, Jay, I'm going to get your slides all queued up, and then the floor is yours, my man.
Thank you, Cole. And
Just to get the presentation pulled up for you. All right. Has everybody seen the introduction to Energy Trust? We good to go there? All right. Jay, the floor is yours, my man.
thank you, Cole, and good afternoon. I want to thank the Portland Rotary Club and especially Cole for the opportunity to share the Energy Trust of Oregon story. Before I do that, I'd like to thank you all for being Rotary members and putting into action the Rotary motto of service above self. I've got a soft spot in my heart for Rotary. My father is a longtime Rotarian and was president of the Corvallis Rotary Club, which he self-deprecatingly described as a monthly meeting of old men and their fathers. Judging from the Zoom tiles I see, Portland Rotary may not be that same kind of Rotary Club, but like Dad and the Corvallis Rotary, you've committed yourself to serve society, and in today's hectic, remote, and somehow connected 24/7 world, that's no small thing. Dad, I often heard about the four-way test that you referenced earlier. Is it the truth? Is it fair? Is it fair to all? Does it build goodwill and friendships? And does it benefit all? And those values, like your trust drive, speak to your dedication to serving others, a trait that is often in short supply these days. Indeed, Rotary and the projects you undertake, I think you exemplify Portland's unofficial motto, which authored by C.E.S. Wood. It's engraved on the Skidmore fountain. If you haven't seen it lately, it says, good citizens are the riches of a city. And I've been a Portlander for 36 years, and I can say we've never needed good citizens and committed service organizations like Rotary more than we do right now. Cole said you want to hear about Energy Trust, who we are, what we do, how we do it, and how our work benefits Portlanders. So I guess we'll get to that. Next slide, please, Cole. Yeah, like Rotary, Energy Trust is a nonprofit organization. We were established in 2002 to help utility customers and communities reduce costs and realize additional benefits by saving energy and using renewable resources. Here in Portland, we serve the customers of Portland General Electric, Pacific Power, and Northwest Natural, and from homeowners and renters to schools and universities to commercial businesses and manufacturers. For most of the last 18 years, our success has largely been measured in kilowatt hours of electricity saved and generated and therms of natural gas saved. That said, our programs also help deliver additional important non-energy benefits, such as lower utility bills, healthier homes, reduced carbon emissions, better air and water quality, and local economic activity. Next slide, please. I mentioned that here in Portland, our offers are available to all utility customers. But as you can see from the map, there are many communities in Oregon where our offerings are more limited or even unavailable. For example, in Ontario and the Dalles, we can only offer natural gas efficiency measures. And on much of the Oregon coast and Eastern Oregon, we don't have any offers at all. That probably begs the question, why not? Next slide. That has to do with how we're funded. The customers of the utilities I referenced, PGE, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Avista, and Cascade Natural Gas, pay a small service charge on their bills. I'm going to hazard a guess that all of you are customers of one or two of those utilities. So on behalf of my colleagues at Energy Trust and the entire energy distribution system, let me again say thank you for your contribution. On the previous slide, the communities in the blank areas are served by one of Oregon's 36, we call them consumer-owned utilities, like Eugene Water and Electric Board or the Oregon Trail Rural Electric Cooperative. Those COUs, as we call them, they don't pay into our programs, so they don't directly benefit from them either. As you can see, the benefits which our partnering utility customers receive are significant. Our investments, really your investments in energy efficiency, have saved customers $4.6 billion on their utility bills so far. Here in Portland, we've invested $395 million and created customer bill savings of $1.3 billion. That's a lot of millions and billions, but let's just say it's not insignificant. Next slide. So here's another way of looking at it. Starting at the top right, utility customers like us pay into the fund. Energy Trust receives those monies and crafts programs and incentive offers. I would suggest, by the way, we don't get all of it. The Department of Oregon Housing and Community Services and the Department of Energy also get some of the monies. Department of Energy uses them to make schools more efficient, and OHCS has been focused on the low-income market for the last 18 years. So again, proceeding around the circle, through a network of small businesses and partners, we reach out to customers with technical advice and support and incentive offers. Customers who wish to install energy efficient equipment and controls or invest in renewables such as rooftop solar. And then we confirm the successful installation and remit those incentives back to the customer. Everybody benefits from lower bills, lower energy acquisition costs, and reduced greenhouse gases. Next slide, please. This one should be oversight. There we go. Earlier, I mentioned that Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit. As such, we are led by our all-volunteer board of directors. By the way, we're currently in the process of recruiting for 2 soon-to-be-open seats on the board. If by the end of this, I haven't scared you off, and if you or someone you know might be interested in serving on our board, please let me know, and I'll send Cole a link to the position description and process for applying. We're getting toward the end of the window. The application window closes on December 10th. Our work is also guided by 3 advisory councils, each made up of stakeholders and experts in their respective issue areas. Now, one is focused specifically on energy efficiency, one on renewable energy, and for the last 3 years, we've relied upon guidance from our Diversity Advisory Council, whose members help us better understand and meet the needs of underserved customers. In addition to our board, since we're spending funds entrusted to us by utility ratepayers, we also report to the Oregon Public Utility Commission, or OPUC. And the OPUC requires that we invest in cost-effective energy efficiency because the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one we don't use and which the utilities don't have to go out and generate or buy. And cost-effective means that the benefit of a project must exceed its cost in order for Energy Trust to provide cash incentives or support to it. This test is intended to guide the investment of ratepayer funds into projects that make economic sense and will pay for themselves over time. Next slide, please. Earlier, I mentioned the customers we serve. We kind of categorize those into 3 different categories. Residential customers, including homeowners, renters, and property managers. Commercial and industrial customers, which would be schools, hospitals, office and apartment buildings, food service, food banks, manufacturers, and indoor agriculture, to name a few. And then our 3rd column there is renewable energy, which is rooftop solar, small hydropower, and biogas. You can see we call out savings within reach and solar within reach in those columns. These offers increased incentives for low and moderate income customers, which is roughly up to 120% of area median income. So this recognizes our programs, while very effective at saving energy, have not always directly benefited certain categories of customers, specifically those who identify as members of communities of color, rural customers, and those with lower income. One hears a great deal about institutional and structural bias, and to be candid, the energy efficiency sector is probably an example of it. Not because my colleagues intend that, they do not. In fact, I'd submit they're a lot like you Rotarians. They get up every morning and work to leave the world a better place in which they found it. But the structure of the system, the rules of the road, has lead to incomes which cumulatively and unintentionally disadvantage certain communities. And I'll give you a couple of examples. State policy directs us to acquire cost-effective energy efficiency, which is, as I mentioned, where the cost of the energy saved is greater than the price the utility would pay to acquire that energy on the market. A logical action for any organization with that mission is to identify and target the cheapest energy efficiency available which happens to be at the industrial level. Small changes to large energy users yield massive energy savings at a very low cost. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know too many low-income manufacturers. Another example, we provide a lot of our mainstream lighting incentives through retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's. Perhaps some of you took advantage of our instant rebates when you bought your compact fluorescent or LED light bulbs. You know, if an LED retails for $5, we analyze the market and the energy savings, determine the least cost incentive needed to move customers to buy the efficient LED, and then provide that amount in a rebate. But it turns out that while we might have to provide a middle income customer a $1 incentive to buy that $5 LED, for low income customers, we might have to pay for most or all of the bulb in order to get them to take it home. The more of these higher incentives we pay out, the higher our program costs. And since one of our key performance metrics is to keep programs cost low and cost effective, there's a structural disincentive to pay out more than we have to. Similarly, for most of our 18 years, our marketing and outreach materials have largely been delivered in English. Well, Spanish, Russian, and Vietnamese speakers are also utility customers and deserve access to our programs, but creating materials in multiple languages costs money and presents cost effectiveness challenges to the programs. And until recently, centering those underserved customers was outside of our mission scope. So you might say we've got some history to overcome. Next slide. That's why beginning in 2015, we started leaning in on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Since that time, we've made progress on our DEI goals, including increasing residential participation in communities of color, increasing participation among rural, small, and medium-sized businesses, and increasing market awareness and understanding of underserved groups. As I mentioned a moment ago, we formed a Diversity Advisory Council, or DAC, to inform and guide our program design and outreach. And at the end of 2019, we recruited and hired the organization's first diversity, equity, and inclusion lead, which is a full-time senior management position. The DEI lead liaises with the DAC, manages internal staff diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and helps Energy Trust incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations into all aspects of our work. And most recently, Energy Trust hired 2 more outreach staff, both of whom are focused on underserved customers and communities of color. 2 may not sound very much, but we only have had 3 before that, so it almost doubles our outreach. Next slide, please. So what have all these laudable but incompletely distributed investments produced for ratepayers? Well, through our service territories, we saved 820 average megawatts of electricity. And by the way, for those of you who want to immerse yourself in the energy efficiency lexicon, which is about the quickest way to kill a first date, I might add, an average megawatt is 1,000,000 watts delivered or saved 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for an entire year. Since 2007, we've also helped our customers save 79 million annual therms of natural gas. A therm is equivalent to 100,000 BTUs or 100 cubic feet of natural gas. Just for fun, I did the math, and 79 million therms is also about the cargo capacity of 10 of the largest LNG tankers. And our incentives have catalyzed the installation of renewable energy projects, mostly rooftop solar, that have generated another 136 average megawatts of renewable energy. And all those savings and generation helped our partner utilities avoid generating 36.2 million tons of CO2 equivalency, which is a slide note, is like taking 7 million cars off Oregon's road for a year. Now Oregon only has 4 million cars, so it's also the carbon equivalent of taking all the cars off Oregon's road for 20 months. Next slide, please. So what's next? Well, as evidenced by our professed difficulties in reaching underserved customers, not to mention the hard lessons we all learned during last summer's heat storm, there's a lot more to do. One area where our efficiency measures can deliver multiple benefits is in the affordable housing sector, especially helping weatherize or even replace aging and inefficient manufactured home. In your earlier part of your program, Mike described the urgency of the housing situation. It's critically important that we provide everyone a roof over their head. Almost as important, as I think someone described, is that it be affordable. And ensuring that that new home is energy efficient is one way to keep it affordable. After all, a roof over a cold room may keep you dry, but you're still cold. So when it comes to manufactured housing, we just completed a pilot program during which we worked with housing agencies, housing nonprofits, and community-based organizations to remove dilapidated pre-1995 manufactured homes, which are hugely energy intensive and expensive to heat and cool, and replace the entire home with brand new energy efficient homes. And by braiding our efficiency incentives with other housing funds, we were able to help buy down the cost of the new homes to such an extent that in many cases, the utility bill savings will be greater than the new mortgage payments. And setting aside the fact that homes will be more efficient, more comfortable, and cheaper to operate, they're also going to be healthier to live in, which brings with it an entirely different set of co-benefits. And by incorporating the pilot into our residential program and with the OPUC's approval, we have dedicated $5 million over the next 5 years to scale up that manufactured home replacement program. And as the slide notes, we have engaged community-based organizations with deep relationships with diverse communities to help us do outreach and direct install of heat pumps and heat pump water heaters into low-income households. And we've recently increased our solar incentives for low-income customers and institutions that serve them so that they too can directly benefit from solar electricity. Next slide. So we're also working to understand and implement new direction provided by the state during the most recent legislative session. I won't go deeply into each of these bills, but suffice it to say that the legislature gave energy policy a lot of attention during 2021. The bill that got the most attention is House Bill 2021, which requires PG and Pacific Power to be greenhouse gas emission free by 2040. In addition to that direction, they created a community green tariff option whereby governments, including cities, counties, tribes, and other public entities, they can specify community-based renewable energy sources to supply their communities. Another significant provision in House Bill 2021 created a community renewable investment program and appropriated $50 million, which communities can apply for to carry out resiliency and renewable energy projects. Little caveat there, the legislature, for whatever reason, exempted Portland from that last loan program, or that last $50 million appropriation. I think it has to do with the fact that Portlanders already made that decision when they passed the Portland Clean Energy Fund ballot 3 years ago, I believe it was. And the bill that most affected Energy Trust was House Bill 3141. Without getting too much into the weeds, the bill extended the sunset and funding for our renewable energy work through 2035 and removed the sunset entirely from our efficiency work, both of which were scheduled to sunset in 2026. Interestingly, 3141 also extended the breadth of our program to allow us to support projects that would contribute to grid resiliency, which we interpret as being able to support, at least in the short term, battery storage, which has previously been outside of our scope. And lastly, 3141 directed us to dedicate 25% of our renewable energy spending to low-income customers wishing to install renewable energy systems. And I'll just kind of run these others by you quickly. House Bill 2475 gave the Public Utility Commission authorization to create different rate classes for energy burden customers. 2289 helped us provide greater incentives to Oregonians rebuilding from 2020's Labor Day fires so that they can incorporate energy efficient measures into their newly reconstructed homes. And House Bill 3218 gives the state more latitude to provide loans to people living in manufactured homes. This will be particularly helpful to residents of Jackson and Lincoln County who experienced significant losses of manufactured homes during the aforementioned fires. Next slide, please. In closing, those are probably the two most welcome words when one is attending Zoom meetings. I'll just say that before coming to work for Energy Trust, as Cole mentioned, I spent some time working for the US Senate. And one of the most valuable lessons I took from that experience was to never filibuster one's friends. So I'll wrap up with this observation and then open it up to questions. Energy Trust was created as a result of leaders with a vision coming together to lay the foundation for a different energy future for Oregon, a future where efficiency and small-scale renewables were considered valuable resources, just like the Columbia hydro system. Energy Trust delivered and continues to deliver on that vision. But society and elected leaders now have a more expansive vision, one where equity and resiliency also feature prominently. We and our partners in the utilities, state agencies, and communities around the state are scrambling to understand and implement that vision. And we'll do it, not because it's easy, or even as JFK said about the Apollo project, not because it's hard, but because we have to. Our future generations deserve no less. And happily, as with the 4 Rotary tests, building that new, more resilient energy future is good for all, good for the economy, good for people's health, and good for the planet, not necessarily in that order. Thanks again for the opportunity to address Portland Rotary. If you haven't succumbed to Zoom fatigue, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you so much, Jay. That was an awesome presentation. Appreciate your time today. And as he mentioned, if any of you have any questions for either of our speakers, if we want to circle back also, please raise your hand or let us know in the chat box. And I see Cole has a question. Cole, you want to get us started?
Yeah, Jay, I was just hoping if you could maybe just give a little bit of an explanation on the Portland Clean Energy Fund, and just how is that different than what you guys are doing at Energy Trust, and what's the kind of primary objective of that particular fund that was created from the voters?
Yeah, thanks, Cole. So Portland Clean Energy Fund, or PCEF, was a result of a citizen-led ballot initiative. I'm going to go 2018, although I don't have the date actually memorized. And it was a tax on large retailers in the city, it's specifically within the city limits of Portland. And the proceeds from that tax would be to go to help low-income and communities of color, which the advocates for the initiative assessed that we had not done a particularly good job of reaching, not just us, but that programs had not done a good job of reaching, and to fund programs for those, both at the household level, the business level. They have a workforce generation element that we don't have. They're doing some things in sustainable agriculture that are outside of our scope. So they kind of looked at what we do and did and said, well, there's much more to be done, and in Portland, we're going to fund it this way. In terms of how we work together with them, we've been attending, in fact, there's one tomorrow night, sorry. We've been participating with the committee. There's a Portland Clean Energy Fund Benefits Committee that meets every couple of weeks on Wednesday evening, and they're all volunteers. And they have crafted over the last 2 years and stood up a program to analyze grant applications, to decide how to disperse money. The first tranche was a large number of planning grants that they put out, but they're at a stage right now where they're starting to envision larger investments. And so these are investments that nonprofits, many of whom don't have deep energy experience, will come to the PCEF committee and say, we would like to do these things. We are trying to be supportive of that and saying, hey, we've been in the business 18 years. We've got data on everybody, every meter in the Portland area that we can help you plan around. We can show you who's using a lot of energy, and we have to anonymize it, so it's not targeting individual names, but we can look at blocks of Portland or neighborhoods of Portland and say, if you wanted to concentrate in this area and maybe analyze an equity overlay on top of that, this is someplace you might want to target. So we're trying to be as supportive as we can, while recognizing that it's a different silo of money that's not at this time something we're in the we're not going to be in line along with the other nonprofits. I will say one of the things they are taking up that's pretty darn important. I mentioned the heat storm earlier. So we got 116 degrees late last June. Oregon has traditionally been a place where energy use has been a winter peak. That's changing, and it's never more evident than last summer. So they're moving into to try to fast forward the procurement and deployment of a large number of cooling appliances and such, air conditioning and heat pumps specifically, and to try to get those out before the summer gets here again. And cooling is something that we barely touch on in Energy Trust, because heretofore, you really only had about 10 days a year when you might need it. Given what happened last summer, that pass may no longer be the case. Did that answer it, Cole?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. And Mark Favinci, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jay, for the presentation. Well, I was wondering if you might have some rules of thumb for when retrofitting an existing house for solar panels would work and when it wouldn't.
Well, I am sitting right below my roof right now, which is a north-facing roof. So if you have a big north-facing roof, that's not currently the best use of solar. Unfortunately, on the south side of my house, I've got two big fir trees that are doing a fine job of taking up carbon, but they also happen to shade my roof. And so I'm one of those people that it really doesn't make sense at this time for me to do it, either economically or quite frankly, from a carbon point of view, because I'd have to take down those two big fir trees. As far as a household, it's actually that's actually changing right now. Several things happened during the last legislature, the 2020 legislature. The state gave the Department of Energy $10 million for incentives. We have per kilowatt incentives that can make sense. And then I think you're going to see that the federal government, well, the infrastructure bill that came out is going to have some funding for renewable energy, probably with a focus on income qualified customers to start with. But it's going to focus on distributed generation as well as updating the utility grid so that we have a more flexible and resilient grid. I can, if you want, though, what I'd suggest is going to energytrust.org to our residential section, and you can click on, and basically we have a list of those trade allies, and they will come out and tell you, yeah, this is what it would cost, and this is what it makes sense, and here's your ROI over time. But it really kind of depends on the rooftop, your exposure, and I'll flip it around, your energy use. If you're being as efficient you can inside and having a solar generation on your roof, that's the best combination, especially if we can add electricity battery storage going forward.
Thanks.
Excellent. And do we have any other questions? We've got time for about one more if we have any last questions. Otherwise, we'll scoot on out of here. Anybody? I see nothing. All right. Well, let's keep rolling. Okay, next week we will be meeting right here back on Zoom at noon on Tuesday, December 7th. Next week's presentation will be from our own fellow Rotarian, Lakayana Drury, who will be speaking about his organization, Word is Bond. Please don't forget, if you have any speaker ideas, please reach out to Dev Dion, who is our chair of the program committee. We're always looking for great program ideas, and our programs depend on our members taking the initiative. Okay, so I want to give a big thank you to Dan for today's very thoughtful and timely reflection. And thanks again to our chair of the day, Cole. And of course, thank you so much to Jay for your presentation today. I appreciated hearing about the Energy Trust of Oregon, something I've been familiar with for a very long time, working with Christensen Electric and now over at Hawthorne Gardening. Both of these companies work closely with the Energy Trust of Oregon, saving money for Oregonians. So thank you very much, Jay, for shining a light on everything that you guys are doing over there. Very important work, and love everything that you guys are working for. I'd also like to thank everybody behind the scenes today that help our programs run so smoothly. Thank you so much to Skylar. Thank you to everybody else that contributes to this production. And most importantly, thank you to all of our committee chairs and to our members for everything that you do. As we close today's meeting, let's all remember why we're here. We serve to change lives. Let's continue to focus on the lives that we change and continue to step up and do the right thing. Thanks again for joining. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jay.